Shalom Aleichem. Today is Musa'ib Shabbat Kodesh. Parashat Korach Tavshin Peheh, or Gimel Tammuz Tavshin Peheh, corresponding to the 28th of June 2025. Leminyan HaTo'im. Hahemir Goy Elohim, Wahema Lo Elohim. Has there ever been such a thing as this, that people exchange a true God for something fake, false? Lo Elohim. Wa'ami hemir kevodo belo yu'il. My people, says Yirmiyahu, switched the real thing, Elohim, for something not real. The Targum here says, Ha amemaya lo shevaku pulhan ta'awatha. The other nations, even though they worship empty, meaningless things, lo shevaku pulhan ta'awatha. They did not relinquish their worship of those idols. وَإِنُّن تَعَوَانِ, even though they're just idols, دَلَتْ بَهُمْ ثَرُوخ, that are of no value. وَعَمِي, my nation, on the other hand, شَبَكُوا پُلْحَنِي, they turned their back on my worship, on their connection with me. دِي وَذِلَيْ, and because of that connection, أَنَا مَا يَثِي عَلَيْهُنْ يَقَرَى وَأَزَلُوا بَثَرْ دَلَا يَنُونَ لَهُنْ. Because of our connection, my brit with Am Yisrael, I brought upon them yakara, kabod, and yet they choose to walk after, to follow things that do not benefit them at all. And of course, the reference is to Avodah Zarah, as Rashi says explicitly. Below Yo'il, Rashi here says, Ba'avodah Zarah she'en ba to'eleth. There is no gain to be had from it, and yet my people choose to walk after these things. Let us go on to the next pasuk, Yod Beth. Shamu shamayim al zoth, v'sa'aru haravu ma'od ha'nom Adonai. The heavens themselves should cry out in shock and in pain at such a thing. It is so outrageous. V'sa'aru, and like as Rashi says, Lashon Sa'ar. In other words, you should be terribly upset. If you notice this thing, you should realize that it's insane. It's beyond comprehension. You should be totally distraught at such a thing. The Targum here says, you can see here on the top right, Itabalu Shemaya, the heavens should mourn, al keden, over this. Al Aradi Yisrael, over Eretz Yisrael, da'afidha lemeherav, that is, in the future, as a result of these things, will be destroyed. Wa'al Beth Makdasha, da'afid le'istad, then the Beit Mikdash that will become desolate. Wa'al Du'uvadin Bishun, should say Bishin, I believe. Yes, it should. While the Uvadin Bishin, unless it's a different girsa of the Targum, because this, which is, I think, probably the most accurate, but I thought it's the same text. It says Bishin, but anyhow, it means these things will happen because of the evil deeds. Bishin is evil, bad. Avadu, Ami lahada amar Adonai, because of the terrible things that my people have done. Yod Gimel. Ki shetayim ra'oth asa ami. My people have done two terrible things. They have sinned doubly. Othi ozevu makor Bar-Hayim. They have turned their back on me. I am a source, a living source of water, like a spring that never ceases to produce fresh water. Lahsov lahem boroth, and instead of, if you have a fresh source of water, that's constantly flowing, providing you with fresh water. You do not need to dig a cistern to collect runoff water, etc., from the rain to save for times when you won't have water. So Am Yisrael are like people who had a Makor Maim Hayim, a living spring, and they chose to dig themselves boroth, cisterns, pits for gathering water, boroth nishbarim, and not just pits, but boroth nishbarim that are cracked, and the water seeps out of them. Ashalo yachilu hamayim, that do not hold the water. The Targum states, Aret tarten bishin avadu ami. Two things my people have done. Pulhani shivaku, they abandon my worship. Divadile, for which reason ana ma'ifeh alehon yakara, I bring upon them great honor. Kemabua demayin de la pasik, like a spring of water that does not cease. Usha'o bathar ta'awatha, and they chose to follow or to take note. Bathar ta'awatha di'inun lahon kiruvin tavirin, to turn their attention to idols that are like a guvin, are pits, boroth, tavirin, broken or cracked, and that cannot retain water. So Rashi says here, Shtaim ra'oth, you see, Im hemiru yiratham b'chayothe ba, yeshkan ra'a hath. Had they replaced that which they worship, that which they fear, for something that is comparable, yeshkan ra'a hath, that would be bad enough. That would be one evil. But in fact, they have turned their back on me, a living spring of water. These are like cisterns of water. But they are cracked. And the water seeps out. So this is it is outrageous what they have done. It is completely it is beyond explanation what they have done. However, Israel is Israel, some second-rate nation and some nobody, im yalid bayit, someone who was born in the house, as Rashi says, ben ha'ama. Yalid bayit is the son of a maidservant who's born into the master's house. So he himself immediately becomes a servant himself. Madua hayalavaz. Why are different nations and peoples able to maraud and pillage and attack him constantly? The Targum says, Hacha avda hawa Yisrael, im yalid beithahu, madan ithmasar levazozin. Why is he at the mercy of the bazozin, those who come livzoz, to pillage, to steal? And the answer, of course, is what we just said. Alo yisharu chafirim, young lions, literally. Nathanu kolam, they roar at him and threaten him. Vayashithu arsol shama, and they turn his land into some desolate place. Aro nisatu mibali yoshev, and my people's cities either have been burnt to the ground, as Rashi explains, nisatu ba'esh, or the term can also be explained to mean have simply been turned, have been made desolate and empty. The Targum here says, Alohi Yochalin Malchaya. The reference is not referring literally to lions. The kings of other nations, the heads of other nations or tribes of people around about Eretz Yehuda, they are able to threaten and to harm Am Yisrael. In other words, Yirmiyahu is describing a situation where Mamlechet Yehuda was weak and unable to protect itself against the neighboring nations. Yorimun kolahon v'shavo ar'el sadu kirwohi sadian mibli yotev. So you see the other pirush is what you see here in Targum Yonatan. Sadian doesn't mean burnt by fire, literally. It means made desolate, empty. Like the word before, l'sadu. L'sadu means also empty, desolate. But Rashi understands nisatu milashon lahasit esh, to light a fire. In other words, burnt down. Either way, the references to the fact that Yirmiyahu, already at this point in his career, and he's here a very young person, Mamlechet Yehuda was not doing well. You can see that Shadal in his Perush, Shadal has a rather comprehensive Perush on Sefer Yirmiyahu, and you can see Shadal over here. He explains the term Nisathu, as we just discussed, in Inyan Horba, destruction. In other words, not fire. והמילה משורש נסף ומעניין שורש ניסה, כמו אורייך תיסנה. It appears again in Yirmiyahu in Perek Daled, lahashot galim nasim. In other words, it's referring to desolation, which is again what the Targum said. So the Shadar is agreeing with Targum Yonatan. Pasuk Tet Zayin, Gam b'nei Nof b'tach panches yir'uk kod kod. Even the Egyptians, these are two cities, Nof and Tach Panches, are able to attack you, to do various things to you. At this time, Egypt was already a much weaker power than it had been in earlier times. There was a time when Egypt was the superpower in the region, but at this point, there is now a new empire in the wake of the destruction of the fall of the Assyrian Empire. Mamlechet Ashur, now Mamlechet Bavel, is on the rise, and Egypt is much weakened and is not able to pick a fight with the Bavlim, but they are able to pick a fight with the Jews because Mamlechet Yehuda is weak. That's what he's saying. Gam b'nei Nof v'tach panches, the Egyptians, as Rashi says here, Hema Mithrim shatem botahim alehem la'izra. You think that they will help you against the Bavlim because there was a constant. You have to understand, Yirmiyahu was living in the period, and he knew what was going on in terms of the politics, in terms of the power play, in terms of the rivalry between the superpowers. And there was much rivalry and competition between Bavel and Mithraim, but now Mithraim is on the decline, and Bavel is on the rise. But you think that the Egyptians will be able to help you against the Bavlim because it's in their interest. And in fact, at some later point, they did try to do so. That's the truth. Before the Churban, they did try to help out, but they were not able to stand up to the Bavlim. The Bavlim crushed the Egyptian army, as we shall see later. So Gam b'nei Nof v'tach panches yir'uch kod kod. They will literally smash you on the head. In other words, they have total supremacy over you. You are weak. You are essentially helpless. Yod Zayin, Halo Zof ta'aselach, ozvechet Adonai Elohaich, ba'eth molichech badarech. And all this comes upon you because of your actions, because you have turned your back on Hashem. As Rashi says here, Halo at Zof ta'aselach, Halo at את הרעה ואת הפורענות הזאת תגרום לך האשמה והעוון אשר עזבת את השם אלוקיך. Turning your back on Hashem has brought about all these things. Be'eth morichech badarech. Hashem was leading you along the correct path, and had you listened, and these things would not have happened. As the Targum also says here, at the top on the right, Hala da pur'anutha tit'abed minich al dishvakt yathpul hanad Adonai Elohach. In other words, these punishments come upon you because of your turning your back on Hashem. Da ahziyach orha thakna, Hashem who showed you the proper path, v'lo halechta ba, but you refused to walk along that path. Yodhet wa'ata ma lach lederech Misraim rishtot me shihor u'ma lach lederech Ashur rishtot me nahar. Do not think that you will save yourself by turning to the Egyptians, rishtot me shihor, literally to drink from their river, the Shihor. They will not help you. U'ma lach lederech Ashur, and do not think the Ashurim, who have now become very weak, and the Bavlim have basically conquered most of what was the Assyrian territory. They cannot help you. These two countries, Mithraim and Ashur, are being referred to by the major river in each one. The Shihor refers to the Nile, as Rashi says explicitly, Shetav'u zechurechem b'nilus, Shihor hu Nilus, as Rashi says here, you see. Kamo shene'emar min ha-Shihor asher panei Mithraim, b'sefer Yoshua. I think we mentioned this before. It's referring to the easternmost branch of the Nile, which later dried up about 2,000 years ago. Umalach lederech Ashur lishtoth me nahar, and the nahar refers to the Prath, the Euphrates, but they cannot help you. The Bavlim are much too strong, and you have turned your back on Hashem, so Hashem will not help you. Tiyaserech ra'athech, and therefore your evil brings upon you your suffering. Tiyaserech ra'athech umshuvotayich tochichuch, and your waywardness will show itself to be your downfall. You're turning your back on Hashem is bad and bitter. And you choose not to fear me. That is not what interests you. As Rashi says, Lo fahdathi pahad she'lo haya b'libech liraothi. That was not on your mind to have in your heart but the fear of myself. The Targum says, Aithethi alach yisurin. I have brought upon you various types of suffering and trouble and calamity. Walo manat minata mibishtich, and you nevertheless do not change your ways. And because you have not returned to the Torah, you will be punished. Evil and bad will come upon you, bitter things will come upon you. You have not placed my fear in front of your eyes. כי מעולם שברתי עולך, ניתקתי מוסרותייך, ותאמרי לא אעבור. כי על כל גבעה גבוהה, ותחת כל עץ רענן, את צועה זונה. Okay, so this pasuk requires a bit more explanation. The Targum states, Are mi'alma Tevareth nir al mayami savorechon. So according to the Targum, it's referring to Hashem's referring to himself, as it were. I always broke off the yoke of the other nations from your neck. Nir mayami savorechon. Pesakith. Pesakith hanikechon. Nitakti, that's nitakti mosarotaich. I broke off the yoke, that which is wrapped around your neck. And you promised that you would no longer transgress my word. And yet, you continue exactly to do as before, to worship Avodah Zarah all over throughout the country. Another perush of the word shavarti olech, or nitakti mosarotaich, is not referring, it's not in the first person, it's in the second person, in an ancient feminine form. So ki me'olam, it's as if it says shavart olech, nitakt mosarotaich. In other words, you always broke the yoke, my yoke, from your neck. Watomori lo e'evor. Now, lo e'evor can also be understood rather in two ways. It can be understood as we just saw in the Targum, or as in Rashi says over here also, lo e'evor al dvaraich, I will not transgress your word. But it can also be understood that I will not, and you see also there's a kare and a kathiv. There's this form and this form, with a dalad and with a resh. Now, the other understanding is that it means, and you refuse to worship and to obey and to follow. Lo e'evor, I will not walk on the path, or lo e'evod, doesn't matter either way. I will not accept your yoke, because you have chosen to worship Avodah Zarah and to become addicted to Avodah Zarah. This is true, by the way. This is exactly so. This is what the Chazal say in Masechet Sanhedrin, that in these times the Jewish people were addicted to Avodah Zarah. Lema davar domeh. I'm sure you've heard of people who have various addictions. For example, a person who is addicted to gambling. It doesn't do them any good, in fact, quite the opposite. And yet they can't stop. They know it's bad, and they can't stop. It destroys their lives, their marriages, what have you. They don't stop. In most cases, that's what happens. I personally know of such a case. Avodah Zarah was a kind of obsession. You could compare it, I think, to the so-called progressives, those I refer to as the regressives today. It's also an obsession. They're obsessed with all these various crazy ideas that are plainly inane, but they don't seem to be able to rid themselves of this obsession. It's important to understand every generation, every historical period has its own challenges. In other words, if we're reading here in Yirmiyahu about Avodah Zarah, Avodah Zarah, Avodah Zarah, and a person might read these pesukim or myriad other pesukim in the Tanakh, speaking about such things, and may say to himself, well, this is all not relevant today, because who worships idols today? All right, maybe in a few countries in India, and I don't know, there are places, certainly, but most of the world with which we are familiar, at least, do not worship Avodah Zarah nowadays, correct? So a person might think, all this is, it's all old hat, it's nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the world in which I live. How is this relevant? Well, that's not true. That's a very major error that people make. Avodah Zarah was the obsession and was the downfall at that time. And today it's other things. Today it's all the insanities and perversions of the various cultures in the world that we see around us, and their abominations and their obsessions and their insane ideologies that lead to terrible outcomes. And yet people chase after these things, literally. There are people in the world, here in Israel, in the United States, in Timbuktu, everywhere. There are people in the world that people who are well off, wealthy, they lack for nothing. And what do they do on their Sunday, their day off? They go to, and I'm not saying this stuff, I myself know of such people, right? Without going into the details how I know them, but I know of such people. They go on a Sunday in America to a demonstration in favor of illegal immigrants into the United States. What exactly is that about? Uh, if you ask them, are you in favor of criminals? Oh, they're not criminals. They're just looking for a better life or something. Well, okay, but did they break the law? Did they enter legally? No, so they're criminals. Um, how many American women have to be raped by illegals in the United States or in other countries? It's not just in America. It happens in the UK every day. It happens in Sweden every day. This is not news. It happens here as well, unfortunately. And yet people are obsessed with these things. This is what they'll dedicate their lives to. They'll drive 3 hours to stand with a placard for an hour, complaining about what's that called? The DEI, is it called? The
Yeah,
department. What's the department of?
it's
Yeah.
equity.
No, no, no.
Uh,
That
that
department which deals with illegal immigration. Immigration. What's it called?
with
I can't.
ICE.
What ICE? Yeah, ICE. Whatever it is. Right. So
Yeah,
they'll spend hours to complain about ICE when all they're trying to do is uphold the law and protect American citizens, or again, any other country you choose to name. So we have to understand what we're seeing here is referring to that time, but it all can be applied in a very real sense to everything that goes on today as well. A good example today, perhaps, would be the insistence of the Rosh Ha'erev Rav Aaron Barak and his minions, their insistence that the welfare of the Jewish people as a nation and the welfare of Israeli soldiers is uh, is trumped by providing supplies to our enemies in Gaza, for example. How does that make sense to a normal person? But somehow, in their mind, that is truly more important. That campaign, those ideas that they embrace, are more important than their own people, the welfare of their country, their nation, their society. Uh, in some strange cases, even their own children. It's really, although most of these people, their children, do not find themselves in such places. It seems, by some miraculous means. It's so obsessions and insanities always exist. The only question is what is the one that's fashionable at the time. ואנוכי, we're in פרק ב' of Yirmiyahu, פסוק כ"א, ואנוכי נטעתיך סורק. Now, I, on the other hand, I didn't raise you, I didn't plant you, as it were, in Eretz Yisrael, like a sorek, which is a fine, um, special, top quality vine for growing the best type of grapes. That's not who you are to follow this Avodah Zarah, this idol worship, all these other ideologies and religions. That I planned something different for you altogether. I planted you as a sorek, a fine vine. Kulo zera emeth. In other words, a a kind of vine that does not fail, that produces the best grapes. And you have become like some wild, uncultivated kind of vine that produces sour grapes. Targum says, وَأَنَا كَيَمْتِخَونْ كَدَمَي I placed you, I set you, I established you, كَمِنْثَاv gafna بَحِرَا like the planting of a fine vine, kuluchon over there, kishot. All of you were supposed to be worshippers and followers of the truth. How have you somehow be transformed? Your terrible actions, your maasim mekulkalim, you have turned your back, turned away from my worship, like a vine that produces nothing of value. The grapes are sour, and you can do nothing with them. Pasuk Kav Gimel, Ech Tomari, Lo Nitmeti, how can you claim, Ahareh Ba'alim Lo Alachti, I have not become Tameh, I have not followed the Ba'alim, which was a common form of Avodah Zarah amongst the Goyim at that time, in that place. Re'i Darkech Bagai, you know very well what you do in the valleys, which is where they used to set up Mizbahot, altars to Avodah Zarah, including child sacrifice. Da'i me'asif bichra khala masarechet deracheha, like a young undisciplined camel that does as it pleases. Here Targum Uncle Jonathan says, Echden temerin la ista'avet. How can you claim I have not become tame'a? Uvathar ta'awath amemaya la helchet. As if you have not walked after followed the idols of the goyim. Zekufi einayich al orhathich kad haweth yothavav v'helatha lekabel beth peor de'ima avad haweth damya leyanaka kalila yimekalkala orhatha. Targum Yonathan here adds takes the word bagai, which refers to the valley, referring to what we find in Sefer in the Torah, referring to Am Yisrael worshipping Peor in a valley. In other words, so you've always done these things. There's nothing. You've always behaved in this way. Nothing new. As Rashi says, Re'i darkech bagai me'asith mul Beth Peor. Remember what you did at Beth Peor, worshipping as Moshe Rabbeinu chastises them in the Torah. وعود عتا at محزكت بأوثا derech, and you still follow the same path. كبخرة خلاها مسرخة درخها, like a young undisciplined camel. As Rashi says here, Bichra Gamla Nekeva, young female camel, Bahura, Shehi Ohevet Lanua, likes to run around freely and get on everybody's nerves. Kaf Dalet, Pera Limud Midbar. You are like the Pera is a wild donkey that lives in the desert areas. Limud Midbar, used to the desert. Ba'awath Nafshah. Sha'afar ruach ta'anatha mi yeshivena. Kol mevaksha lo yi'afu b'chodsha yimsa'unnaha. So you are like the wild, untamable pera of the midbar, the wild donkey. that is set on its ways and very very stubborn. מי ישיבנו? כל מבקשי לא יעפו. בחודשה ימצאונה. Those who try and chase her down will have to chase and chase, but at some point you will find her when she's weaker. Some explain that this refers to when she is pregnant. When the female is pregnant, then she becomes heavy, and then she can run less quickly. Kafeh min iraglech miyahef. Ugronech mitzimah vatomri noash lo ki ahavti zarim va'aharehem erech. So this pasuk describes the tremendous obstinacy of Am Yisrael at that time. Again, it's a kind of addiction. Targum says, "Muna'i riglich mileit habara la'amamaya." What you should do is and that's what we always have to do. This is Am Yisrael is Am levadad yishkon uvagoyim lo yithashav. Muna'i riglich mileit habara la'amamaya. Turn your foot away from joining with or being like or being similar to or learning from the goyim. ופומך מלמפלח לתעוות פלחי כוכביה, and your mouth, turn your mouth away from having anything to do with those who worship the stars and the planets. وأمات تaveth מבשר פור הנח לא תaveth מבשר פור הנח. But yet you say the opposite. Taveth מבשר פור הנח. I have turned away from your worship, Hashem. I'm not interested. I like joining forces or being like the goyim, learning from the goyim. I will follow in their ways. So Am Yisrael said, Noash, whatever these Nevi'im say, we're not going to take. We can't deal with it. We can't take what they say seriously. We can't adopt what they say. Rashi here says over here, Vatomari al divra Nevi'im Noash and Mihus. In other words, we don't care. We're apathetic to what you have to say. Noashti bedivrechem. Kevoshet ganav ki moseh, like a thief that has been caught red-handed. Ken hovishul bet Yisrael. So you should, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Hema malchehem sarehem v'chohanehem unevehem. All of them, all of the different ranks and people, types of people in Am Yisrael. Kevahathaf gevar demit hashev meheman, like a man who was considered trustworthy and then is all of a sudden shocked. Umishtakach geniv, and then when he's found to be a thief, he is all of a sudden at a loss. Ken behithu bet Yisrael inun malkehon Rav Revehon, Rucha Hanehon, Unviehon, the Shikra, and the obviously it's referring when it says Niviehem here, it doesn't refer to real Nevi'im, it refers to Nivi'eh Sheker. In other words, the vast majority of the people were guilty and were complicit. You see that Rashi translates exactly, explains the pasuk exactly like Targum Yonathan. He says, "Ki maseh bat tehila keshehu nimsa ganav." When a person who is considered trustworthy is found, nimsa ganav, hu haya muhzak neman, but he was considered trustworthy. Kach tirgem Yonathan, says Rashi. Kav zayin, omerim la'es avi ata. These people say to a piece of wood, "You are my father." Ula even ati livtanu, and to a stone, "You have brought us to life, given us birth." Kifanu elai oref v'lofanim. They have turned the back of their neck towards me rather than their face. Uva'ethra atham yomaru kuma v'hoshienu. And yet, when times are tough, they turn to me and they say, "Save us." Targum says, Omerin l'thelem a'a avuna at. They say to a pestle of wood, you are our father. Ulamad damit aved min avna omerin le'at berethona. And to that which is made of stone, they say, you have created us. Are ahzaru fulhani. Kadal. They have turned the back of their neck towards me. V'lo shawiu dehalti lekevel apehon. They did not place my fear in front of them. Ucha'idan davishata athaya alehon. And when evil comes upon them, kafirin v'ta'awathahon umodan kadamai. And yet they will in the future. This is what they do, and they will do this again. When things don't go well, they will turn around and say, "We are kofir. We have nothing, no more to do with avodah zarah." And they say, "Rahem alana ufarokana," and save us. Have mercy on us and save us. And where are those gods that you made for yourself? Yakumu im yoshi'ucha ba'eth ra'athecha. And let them come up, let them rise up and save you in your time of trouble. Ki mispar arecha hayu alohecha Yehuda. The number of your towns and cities in Mamlechet Yehuda is the number of your gods. In other words, they are very numerous. And Rashi says, Mispar arecha yu Elohecha, b'chol ir va'ir elo acher. Each town has its local deity, and they also will no doubt tell you, kach minhag avuthenu, this is our minhag, we're just following in our father's footsteps, which is the right thing to do, correct? Etc. People always have excuses. Lama kafteth, lama thorivu elai. Why would you have any complaint against what I'm saying or doing? Kulachem pesha'atem bi no'am Adonai. All of you have been sinful against me. As Targum on Yonatan says, Lama atun medaman lemedan lekaval pitgame. What can you possibly have to say? Kulachon meradtun b'memori amar Adonai. You have all rebelled against me. And Rashi, based on Chazal, says, "Afal tzadikim b'mashma, hainu damrei nashe b'ahdeh husa lakia karba." In other words, they are incidentally also the tzaddikim are also caught up in the awon hador, in the sins of the generation. Lamed lasho hiketi at benechem. I have punished and struck your children. Musar lo lakachu. They have not taken notice. Achala harbechem nevi'echem ka'aryeh mashchit. And your own hands, your swords, literally have killed nevi'im that were sent to you. Lemagan, says Targum Yonatan, lemagan al kethi yat benechon. For no purpose have I punished your children, your younger people. Ulfan la kabilu. They did not receive, they were not willing to receive any instruction. Katlet harbechon nevi'echon ka'aryeh de mehabil. And Rashi explains what are they being referred to. Achla harbechem et nevi'echem. Which of these nevi'im? Haraktem et Zechariah v'Yeshayahu. Zechariah was a Kohen, Kohen Gadol and a Navi, and he was killed in Sefer Melachim. And Yeshaya, according to Chazal, was also killed by the king. In other words, those who speak the truth are often ridiculed, and sometimes far worse than that. The expression in Hebrew is Ha'emeth keveda, the truth is heavy, v'noseha mu'atim, and those who carry it are few. Hador, atem ru'u et devar Adonai. This generation, take stock of your reality. Listen to the words of Hashem. Hamidbar ha'ithel Yisrael, was I like a desert to Am Yisrael? Im eretz ma'apeliyah, like some dark, unhospitable place. Madua amaru ami radnu lo navo od elecha. Why do my people say radnu? I'll explain the word radnu in a moment. Lo navo od elecha. So first of all, what does the Targum say? Am dara, you, the current generation, take note. Atun kabilu pitgam Adonai. Listen to the word of Hashem. Ha kemidbar sadeh. Ha kemidbar sadeh dalet behana'a wahawa memori Yisrael. Was I like that which I taught, the Torah, and that which I showed you and instructed you, was that something unworthy, unpleasant, like and negative, as if I led you into a desert? Im kara hurba, like a destroyed dark land. Ma then amaru ami. What is this that my people say? Italtelna lanatub odreful hanach. We have moved away. Madua amaru ami. Why do my people say ratnu lo navo od elecha? The word radnu it's important. It's a good thing to look here to understand this word. First of all, the word radnu, according to Targum, he says italtelna, which means we have shifted away. Another explanation of the word radnu is like the word maradnu with a mem, maradnu. We have rebelled. In other words, we've decided we've moved away from you. Radnu lo navo od elecha. We will no longer turn towards you. And this is an interesting thing to note. Rashi explains the term radnu here over here. Nivdalnu mimach, we have separated ourselves from you. Kamo haroveh path minatanu. Rashi explains it like the word lirdov et path. I don't know if you've seen such special ovens for baking of certain kinds of flat bread, where the bread is stuck on the side of the oven, where there's a very hot wall, and then it has to be scraped off and removed. That action of removing the bread from the oven is called rediat hapath, is removing or separating the bread from the oven, from the wall of the oven. So Rashi explains radno is like we have separated from ourselves, which is actually similar to essentially what Targum Yonatan said also. כך מדרש רבי תנחומה ומנחם פירש רדנו לשון ירידה ועוד פנים אחרים. So Rashi says it can be explained in a number of ways. Menachem ben Saruk explained Yerida. In other words, we have gone down. We've gone down to a different path. We've followed a different path from you. Another explanation, which is interesting, is the Abarbanel. Rabbi Yitzchak Abarbanel says over here. מדוע אמרו עמי רדנו? כלומר, יש לנו, listen well, יש לנו ממשלה. We have a government, מלכים ושרים. ולכן לא נבוא עוד אליך, ואין אנו צריכים להשגחתך. We don't need you. We don't need your protection. We have people looking after us. As Marom Chaini, he used to be head of the Israeli Navy, said recently about our recent military successes in Iran. He said, well, it's obvious. He says our technologies are superior to their technologies. We're just better than they are. So that's the explanation. We don't need Hashem in the picture. Shadal also explains it that way. Basically, well, it's one of the explanations that Shadal accepts. So now on to Pasuk. No. Yes, Pasuk Lamed Bet. Hatishkach betula edya kala kishureha wa'ami shechehuni yamim en mispar. a young bride does not forget her jewelry, kala kishureha. In other words, she doesn't forget the day when she got married and how she prepared for that day, etc. But my people, Ami, Shechechuni, they forget me. Yomim en mispar, for the longest time. Targum says, Ha'efshar datit neshev v'tuletha tikuna kaletha kishutaha. Is it possible that a young woman would forget such things? It's not. But my people who were young, as it were, when I brought them out of Mitzrayim, they forgot everything. Dela minyan, yamin dela minyan, for days without number. Lamed Gimel. מה תטיבי דרכך לבקש אהבה, לכן גם את הרעות לימדת את דרכייך. This pasuk also requires a little bit of an explanation. The Targum says, Ma'at mishtapera be'or hothaich. Why? Why do you think that what you need to do is to make greater efforts to join forces with other nations? Literally to search for love and to become on better terms with the other nations. Even the evil nations have learnt evil from you. In other words, when Am Yisrael goes astray, it can really teach others how to go astray. Jews have that ability to be either very, very high or very lowly, as it says in Masechet Megillah. They can be like the stars, or they can be like the dust, very high or very low. ל"ד גם בכנפייך נמצאו דם נפשות אביונים נקיים, לא במחתרת מצטרפים כי על כאלה. And there is much bloodshed in your midst. Dam nafshot evyonim nikim, literally the blood of poor and innocent people, as it says here in the Targum, af besitra ishtakaht da ashad dam zakai. You have spilt innocent blood in secret. Dam nafshat the miskenim, poor people, zakain, innocent people. לא כמו משכחין במחתרתה, אלא הן על כל ילן עבד. In other words, not like not people who deserve to die, like a person who breaks into your home at night. All these things I have found in your. I have seen and I know this is what you are guilty of. ותאמרי כי נקראתי, אך שב אפו ממני, הנני נשבעת אותך על אומרך לא חטאתי. And yet, you try to claim that you are righteous or without blemish. ותאמרי כי נקראתי, as the Targum says, ואמרת, הרי זכיתי ברם טוב ורזה מיני. And you try and tell yourself that you have settled the accounts with me. Ach shav apo mimeni. But that's not true. Hinani nishpat otach. But that's not true. I will judge you. Al omrech lo hatati. Because of what you say, that I have not sinned. Pasuk lamed well. Ma tezeli ma'od l'shanot et darkech. Gam le'Mitzrayim tevoshi kasher bosht me'ashur. In other words, do not think that any of these other nations will help you. Ma'at mistakala lahada lekalkala yat or hatayich. Do not try and copy the other nations and find favor in their eyes. Af Mitzrayim tivhatin, you will be shocked and ashamed. Kamod divhat me'athurah, from the Ashurim. In other words, they will not save you. They will not come to your aid. As Rashi says here, L'shanot et darkech. Why do you think that you can change your ways? La'azov, turn away from me. Will yismoch al Mitzrayim, rely on the Egyptians who will save you. Le'ezra b'mei Yehoyakim v'Sidkiyahu. This is what happened when the Bavlim, Nebuchadnezzar, it should be said, was willing to for Mamlechet Yehuda to be a vassal state and pay tribute and be obedient and not cause trouble. And not, he didn't necessarily want to physically conquer the land. But each time, both in the time of Yehoyakim and Sidkiyahu, the last kings, they broke the treaty. They abrogated the treaty with Bavel, and they thought that Mitzrayim would come to their aid. You shall find yourself walking away with your hand on your head, which is a sign of mourning and of anguish. And those who you think will save you will not save you. And Hashem cannot bear these people. Af milwath den tippekin. Hashem pushes away all those people that you rely on, and they will not save you in any way. Placing one's hand on one's head as a sign of mourning and of shame, we see with regards to as Shadal points out here, we see with regards to Tamar and Amnon and Tamar. Amnon raped Tamar in Sefer Shemuel Beth, and after this event, it says he raped her. And then he told her to get out, as is the way with such things. And what did she do, Tamar? Watikach Tamar efel ad rosha, she placed ashes on her head. Uchtonet hapasim asher alea kara'a, she rent her garment. Watasem yada al rosha, she placed her hand on her head. Watelech haloch waza'aka, and she went off and moaned and cried and bewailed her fate. So the expression yadaich al roshech is an expression of, it describes a situation where a person has been humbled and finds themselves done wrong by and bemoaning their fate. Tov, we finished the perek for today. We'll stop here. היו ברוכים, חזקו ואמץ לבבכם, כל המייחלים אל אדוני. שלום שלום.